All right, we are live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to LinkedIn Live. I'm Dr. Dawn Graham, host of the SiriusXM 132 Dr. Dawn on Careers. It's on every Thursday at noon Eastern. And today I'm joined by Beth Hendler-Grunt, who is the founder of Next Great Step, a firm that helps college students and recent grads to achieve success in a variety of ways through coaching, group sessions, professional speaking. And we're talking today all about how you can manage your career in 2020. So if you're a new grad or you're a recent grad and you are looking for a job, today is the day to ask Beth any question you want on how to be more successful. And you can just type in the chat box what you want to ask, and we'll try and get to all of your questions in this episode. And on a very fun note, we will be repurposing this interview to be featured on a live session of SiriusXM Dr. Dawn on Careers. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, Beth. It's so good to talk to you again.
Great to talk to you. Thanks so much for having me.
So you've been on our SiriusXM show a couple of times, and this is very different because we're usually actually in person. So now we're doing video coming live from our homes, which is what a lot of people are doing due to sheltering in place. And I think this is a very timely topic because a lot of students are getting ready to graduate, or some may already have graduated and they're in the job search, which is difficult enough in a normal year, but this is kind of a crazy year. So what are you seeing with new grads in this job market?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much for asking. And before I even start, I hope everybody is viewing this where they are safe and their families are safe, because it's such an uncertain time, probably such an unpredictable time. So wanted to share a couple bit about some of the trends that we're seeing, some statistics, and maybe both of us, I think, can offer some hope about how to move forward in this process. So some of the recent data that's come in, about 1/3 of the internships that were committed to have been canceled, which is tough because a lot of college students are counting on those experiences to help them after. The National Association of Colleges and Employers are saying that 59% of internships and post-grad work is still on, which is good, better than more than half. And about 40% of those are now moved to virtual or delayed. So even the big investment banks have shortened their programs. They are now virtual as well. And an interesting statistic that also just came out by monster.com saying that more than 50% of grads are applying to jobs that are the wrong fit, because there is this desperation to take anything. And I think that's understandable. Maybe we'll talk about maybe that's not always the best approach in this market, but those are some of the things that are happening right now. And especially in the next few weeks, as the class of 2020 is about to enter the market, I know there's a lot of concern. So, one day at a time, as we tell my clients as well, but we'll get into what to do next.
So that's an interesting point you bring up, Beth, because when you talk about right fit in non-pandemic times, we certainly have a lot to say about how to determine fit. But right now, certainly there are some industries that are being hit hard and other industries that are actually thriving. So students may be encouraged to pursue something that maybe isn't in their direct career path, but might get them experience in some way. So I guess a two-part question. Can you talk a little bit about the industries that are hiring? And then I want to talk a little bit about how far should you stray from your career path to gain applied experience? Because as we know, applied experience definitely is important, and there's a lot of transferable skills that students can gain.
Yeah, great question. I think there was a post the other day, I think on LinkedIn by one of the editors, and I think I commented on this. The industries that are hiring, and there are industries hiring. So the first thing is that although the statistics are challenging and it's very difficult, but people are hiring. I had a client who had 3 job offers last week. He is coming out of school as a 2020 grad. There are opportunities to be had. It's looking for them in the right places. So the industries, tech is really popular. Companies like Microsoft, Facebook, Twitter, productivity software, things using Zoom that most people have jumped onto, or companies like Asana, Oracle. Obviously, grocery and food delivery are big as well, but also in the online streaming services, we're consuming a lot of content, and all of those companies, Netflix, Hulu, those are big. And the other thing that I think is an industry that's really booming right now is pharmaceutical, from a standpoint of all of those, not only are there needs for drugs, but also the over the counter that we need, ibuprofen and pain relievers and soap. Those industries are really doing well. Even last night, a dad who a daughter is working in the pharmaceuticals and is just really doing well, which is great. So I think looking for the industries where that there's a need, especially in light of this current environment, is really important.
Yes.
To focus on that.
So in the part 2, because there are certain industries that are still hiring, and students may not have had an opportunity to gain solid experience during their 4 years, what types of roles that are in the process of still bringing on employees or interns would offer new grads some really solid transferable skills for the future?
Sure. Well, what I always tell grads before you run towards a job or just apply to many, many jobs online, I don't think that's a great strategy even now. I think you should be really clear about what are your own skills. So before you apply and run online, what is it that you have? Are you a great problem solver? Are you analytical? Are you more creative? Are you a good writer? Understand what is it. Maybe you worked on team projects in school and you're a good team player. And it doesn't have to be these incredibly elaborate experiences. It can be things that you've learned over time. So have to know your skills, where you've used them, and then think about where can I transfer them. So maybe a company might need, maybe you're great with writing. A company probably needs their HR manual rewritten to incorporate remote workers. So maybe you didn't think of working for Instacart, or maybe you're not looking to work on the front lines, but I bet you in their HR department there's needs, and in the marketing department there's needs. So thinking about how can you transfer your skills to these companies that have such huge growth opportunities and needs right now, because they're hiring across the board. It's not just what you think you see, on the front line. I think that's a really important kind of way to focus.
So a question came in that's somewhat related to what you said. So I want to kind of dive into that. And the question is, what advice do you have about relying on Indeed or online job boards, as most of these opportunities do not seem realistic in the current environment? So, you mentioned applying on job boards, and you also mentioned a few minutes ago about applying to just about everything. We both know this is a terrible strategy. It seems productive. It feels productive when you're behind your computer typing out, cover letters and sending them off. But we also know it's really competitive. There's applicant tracking systems that need to be navigated, and that more students often get jobs through networking. So has this shifted at all during this time, Beth? Is there a new strategy that's going to be helpful for the new grads of 2020?
So I think so. I think, before, as we both agree, the advice was always to network directly. I think that's going to matter even more in this environment. 80% of jobs are found by referral. They're not found online. They're just not. People hire people, and people want to hire people that they know, trust, and can help them to achieve their goals inside the business. And the more, I think, people are also very willing to talk to recent grads. Look, we were all in the same position. So if I have lots of young people, grads reaching out to me or any candidate, I think people are willing to give you advice, give you a hand, talk to you, understand what you're about. And I think you have a much better chance of being really focused and targeted on where you want to go. By the way, but you need to make sure your story is clear and you have a good way to explain yourself. So it can't just be like, hey, what do you have for me? You have to add some value. But the more you direct network, I think now more than ever, it's going to be more valuable. A lot of jobs online, sometimes they're not real. Sometimes they're a scam. Sometimes it's hard to tell. I've had that question before too, of how do you know if it's a real job? You have to really vet it. Is there something you can search online? Does the career exist on their career section or in the about section on their website? Can you find people who actually work there and talk to them? So I think, just sorting out what's true and not, but I think the best way is to, start with your alumni. You're coming out of college. That's the best resource, because people who had the same major or same interest can tell you what it's like to work in their career, who maybe studied the same thing at school.
Hey, and if you're just catching this, you've caught us on LinkedIn Live. I'm Dr. Don Graham, and this is Beth Hendler-Grunt, and we're talking all about how new grads can be successful in their job search in 2020. And we'll be repurposing this for SiriusXM Dr. Don on Careers in a few days as well. So if you have a question, go ahead and type it in. We'll do our best to get to all of those questions. So Beth, you're talking about a lot of different things, and I want to tap into networking before we jump off of that, because as you know, it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. But I think one of the unique opportunities we have right now is that if you cannot find the employment you were hoping to find, I think we can all offer to help others. And this is a great networking strategy all the time, but particularly in these times, look for opportunities where there's a need, and there are plenty of them. And then think to yourself, what is my superpower? What do I excel at, or what can I be of assistance at right now? Because I think a lot of people automatically think about job and paid opportunity, but I think right now there's going to be a lot of opportunities to volunteer, build skills, build your network through that volunteer opportunity. And another one that people often overlook, I find, are temporary roles. So what are your thoughts on temporary roles, and have you seen any shift in those with the current situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think your point is absolutely valid. I have been encouraging students, grads, those who've been out, to find ways to help in whatever way they can. So a couple things. One, if your internship was canceled, your opportunity was canceled, the main goal, especially I'll go back to internships, is to gain skills. So what can you do? And maybe it's on a much local level. So I really tell sometimes people, think local. Think about the pizzeria in your town who's delivering food that you're counting on them. Well, maybe they need help optimizing their process. Maybe they're not delivering it in the most efficient way. Maybe they need help on their social media to promote what their specials are. If you can offer, say, hey, I have an idea about how to do that. Let me do that for you. Let me look at your process. Let me look at your ordering or your supply chain. Those are great ways for young people to not only give help to businesses that actually really need it, but you're also acquiring the skill and you're practicing how to do something, maybe even more so than you learned in the classroom. So I think as much as you can find ways, obviously there's so many people in legitimate need in terms of volunteering, but I think also in the business world, by the way, like even though tax day was April 15th, now it's moved to July. I know lots of accountants who are very busy trying to get everyone to get their information, applying for loans. I think there's lots of local ways to learn skills. And that's really the goal. What can you learn that will help you along the way to ultimately to what you want to do? And then when you get in front of a larger employer that maybe you want to be in front of, you can share how you optimized your time and use. That's going to be a big question, by the way. A lot of employers are talking about in the interview. They're going to say, well, tell me how you used your time when you were in quarantine, or what did you do to utilize your skill set or give back? And I think being ready with an answer and being able to do something is important.
Yeah, I've heard that as well, Beth, that question is coming up and people aren't prepared for it to be asked, what did you do or how did you handle the situation? And people need to think about the fact that right now, you're probably gaining a lot of transferable soft skills that are going to be so critical in the job market. And that could be adaptability, certainly creativity, learning to deal with ambiguity and how to function in that. So the more you can demonstrate that, whether or not it's for a paid job or not, that's still experience. And I think we all need to recognize that you don't need to get a paycheck to earn experience in something. So if you're just joining us, please go ahead and type a question in the comment section. We're talking all about what the class of 2020 can do now to be successful in their job search. And another question came in for you, Beth, around internship. What do you think are the keys to landing an internship?
Well, I think like any job, I think a couple things. One is looking for, now a lot of internships were canceled. So the first thing I would actually tell people, if you had an internship and you were hired and you were now told that it's no longer one, I would recommend first go back to them. Say, I totally understand the situation that you're in and that you can't have me as an intern in that role. But you know what? If you need me in a different capacity, I will do it for you. I will take on projects that maybe it's outside the scope of what you initially thought, but I will go and do that for you. So first and foremost, if you had it, please go back to the employer and just offer to help the way we just talked about in any way they need, because these businesses have work. There's a backload of work that's not getting done at this point. So start with that. If you have not yet gotten an internship and you were going to start, one of the things that I've been seeing more about are these micro internships. In essence, they're like short freelance opportunities where you work for a company for 5-10 days to work on a project. There's a company that I become aware of called Parker Dewey. And I spoke with the CEO about it. And basically they engage with companies who are looking specifically for college students and grads to do short-term projects. It could be maybe sorting through an Excel database, or maybe it's updating a manual, or maybe it's looking at something to optimize in a project level, like a freelancer. But there's other sites like that, like Upwork, where you can learn. But I think even if you learn something in 5 days or 10 days, it's still valuable to your overall. You might have to pull a couple things together. I'll tell you, my son, just to know, I'm living this right now. My son is just finished his junior year. He's about to be a senior. He had a great internship for the summer and it got canceled. And what I told him is go back to them and see if you need help. They didn't need it right now. I guided him. I said, hey, let's look for people on LinkedIn who might be in a similar area, offer to help. And it turned out somebody who was running webinars and the topic that he wanted to do it said, you know what, hey, you can help me run the webinars and maybe you can even be one of the speakers. So it's not a full-time gig. He's going to pull a couple things together. He's going to go back to the person he interned last summer and say, hey, can I help you do that? So I think you have to hustle. You have to be resourceful. You might need to pull a few things together. And if you need to make money, you might need to deliver food. So I think you have to kind of look at a couple of different things. It's not going to be this one perfect internship, but I think there's opportunities out there.
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing to learn how to hustle and learn how to be creative in finding a job, because the way that most people believe you're supposed to find a job, which is applying online, going through the applicant tracking system, gymnastics, getting a call for an interview. I mean, that's not how the majority of people find the best opportunities. So you're also learning how to conduct a job search that is proactive and not reactive in nature. So you're more likely to find a job that isn't posted anywhere, that wouldn't have emerged if you didn't stir up the conversation. And I think if you can learn to do that now, you're way ahead of the game, because you're going to be very successful in your career when everybody else is simply applying online and you've already figured out how to drum up opportunities through your connections or through your creativity. So hey, you're just catching us live on LinkedIn. Well, we are taking your questions all hour till 5 o'clock. So go ahead and type them in the comments. And on that internship, Beth, there was a follow-up question on that. What about a fall internship? Is that a good idea?
It's funny. So I hear that talking about a lot, even in my own family. We're talking about, do you take a gap semester, gap year? Do you go back to school? Or maybe it's worth, looking at work in the fall. I think you have to really balance where you are in your college career, what you need to acquire. And I think if the opportunity presents it, let's just say hypothetically that people are in a remote learning environment in the fall. We don't know yet for a lot of schools, but let's just say if you are, or if we give you the option and you have spare time and you can take on some additional work, whether it's, I don't know if it's full-time or part-time, by all means. I mean, I'm very supportive of doing internships any time of the year. It doesn't have to be just in the summer. It could be over winter break for 3 weeks. If you can fit it into the fall, I would say go for it, as long as you can manage your studies and feel like you can do both well. But I know plenty of students who find opportunities for internships at any time throughout the year. It doesn't have to be just during the summer, because opportunities present themselves all the time. And I'll offer one other thing about internships. I mean, this is the time also for people who are more creative or science oriented to build that app, to code the game that you've been thinking about, to put your portfolio online if you're an artist. Like, this is also the time to do those projects that you've been thinking about. There was a gentleman on LinkedIn, I saw that he got together 20 students from across the country, and they're going to work on some kind of product that's actually or solution that's going to help improve the safety in the COVID-19 situation. So, hey, that's something that you worked on. These are all ways to you create your own internship. You're creating your own experiences.
Something else I think we're going to see this year, Beth, is people doing unique years. And you've already alluded to this, but many people who go for a 4-year degree kind of have a lockstep process. And I think what we're going to see, like you mentioned, some gap years, we're going to see some part-time classes with part-time work and different types of ways to complete those requirements. Obviously, some students really enjoy the in-person experience, so they might take some time off so that they can wait and have that experience hopefully again next year. So I think that's a very cool opportunity for students to say, hey, I get to structure this any way I want. And this has always been an option, but I think this is the first time that more people have been forced to look at it that way. And I think a lot of great experiences and new ideas are going to come out of that. So let's keep up with the questions. We got a question around, what do you think about taking assessment tools? So self-assessment tools, does it provide valuable insight?
Great question. I think depends on the tool. I think depends on what purpose you're using it for. If it's something you have access to and you feel like it can give you another data point about you or your grad as the kind of employee they might be or the kind of opportunity, then go for it. In our practice, what we have seen work the best in terms of helping young people who say, I don't know what to do with my life and I don't know where to go. We really try to help them understand two things. One, what are your skills that you have today and what are real experiences that leverage them? And then learn how to communicate them so you can talk to people who are doing a job that you're thinking about. Because we can, people can search on the internet all you want, or you can make assumptions and guess, but until you speak to someone who's actually doing the job that you're really thinking of, we find that's the best way to get clarity, saying, well, you know what, I think I'd like to learn more about that, or I think that could be a good fit for me versus not. So I'm all about more of the people interaction, because I think that yields better outcomes in terms of having a real story and real feedback of what it's like to be in a certain field. But by all means, if there's testing available and you feel that it's helpful, then do it.
Yeah, I look at it as a piece of the puzzle. I think one of the things that we've lost since we have these computers in our hands now, our cell phones, is the art of self-reflection. And I think that is so critical. And self-assessment can be a big part of that. So if you're just talking about filling in a bunch of circles and waiting to see what comes, what color you are, what keywords you are, I don't think that's as helpful as really processing that and exploring what it means for you in an applied way. And I love the idea of maybe doing an assessment and then tagging on to what you're talking about, Beth, which is then test it out, go have a conversation, go ask somebody and say, hey, on the Strengths Finder, I came out as these things. How do you see that playing out in your job? And, where do you see that being applied? Because I do think you have to look at the exploration process from a number of ways. Quite frankly, I agree with you that networking and speaking to people and informational interviews are one of the best, job shadowing. But I think if you're not even sure where to start, starting with an assessment can give you some key terms and some ideas about how you're similar or different to different types of needs or interests, but then you have to take it a step further. There's no really one way to find the answer, because the fact is there are so many answers. We're all good at a number of things. We're all interested in a number of things, and that is very cool because that means we have lots of options. So we have a pretty specific question here from Eric. My daughter wants to pursue a career in screenwriting. Given the current economic climate, particularly when places like New York is on hold for now, what recommendations do you have to help her in that endeavor?
So I've had a number of clients actually going into the screenwriting space, and as I said earlier, actually, I feel like streaming and content is in high demand, right? Whether you can actually get it filmed, going ongoing, but we are consuming an enormous amount of streaming and online content. So again, I think it comes back to what city do you want to be in? What field do you want to be in? What kind of writing? It's just getting clarity on understanding, what are my top 10 companies I want to focus on? What are the top 10 people that I want to reach out and talk to who are doing screenwriting or something in the field that I want, that maybe I need to have an informational interview with them. I don't know if I'm going to answer to tell you, who's hiring for screenwriting. It's teaching you how to find the people who can give you that direction, or the people who are doing that job and say, hey, you know what? Maybe New York is a tough place for us to get things done right now, but we have a lot going on in this market or a different market, or we have things wherever. But I think really understanding by learning how to talk to people who are in that space will help give the best information.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these industries too, Beth, are in flux right now. They were maybe initially thinking we have to shut down for a few weeks, and then it became a few months, and now it might be till 2021. And so I think all of these different industries are looking at how can we morph and how can we evolve with what's happening. So I think a lot of the jobs are going to morph and evolve with that happening. So definitely getting involved in the industry in terms of working with or meeting with or informational interviews with people who are in that industry is going to be very helpful. And they may not have the answers of what it's going to look like, but I think getting connected with the people who are where you want to be is a great start, no matter what industry or career you're looking for. So thank you again for all of your questions in the comments. We have a question from Alexander. What suggestion do you have for an MPA grad who's looking to switch from B2B sales and more towards their degree concentration, so organizational leadership? And of course, we love switchers, I have to say.
I'm going to say, this is for you, Dawn. You're the queen of switchers.
Well, first off, I would say it's funny because I'm currently drafting an article, my next article for Forbes, and I think the first sentence of that article is a piece of advice that was given to me when I was in college from a college advisor who said, get a job in sales, because from there you can pretty much springboard to anything. And so if you're currently in sales, what that tells me is that you have a lot of transferable skills that you can offer. And I think that's first and foremost. I think there's really 3 steps when it comes to making a switch like this. The first is assessing your skills, your superpower. What is it that you're great at? The second piece is assessing the market. So what does the market need right now? And as we know, this has really shifted in the last 3 months for a lot of different industries. So even if you had done your research before, it might be a good idea to go back and say, hey, what's changed? What are we seeing? What's emerging? What's kind of decreasing? And then reinventing yourself based on those 2 pieces. So you think about, what is my superpower? What do I offer? What are my skills? What problems need to be solved in the market right now? And then the reinvention piece is putting those 2 together, which is, okay, how can I use my superpowers to solve the problems in the market space? And so it sounds like you have a degree in this area, which tells me that you have the language, you have the understanding of the foundations of this area. So next it comes to, what can you offer for the current situation in terms of marketable skills? And back to what you said, Beth, which is, get to know the people who are working there now. What are they experiencing? What are they struggling with? What is changing that they didn't expect? And I think I'm still trying to see all the silver linings here, but I think another silver lining is that a lot of these industries are still figuring things out. And if you have the time and you can help them, so instead of reaching out, networking in a way that says, hey, here's what I need, I think this is a great opportunity for you to reach out and say, hey, here are some of my skills. I see this is what's happening in the marketplace. Can I be of assistance to you? Even if that's not paid, because this is going to get your foot in the door. This is going to give you an opportunity to show your skills, and this is going to give you an opportunity to network with the people who are later going to be the ones to make those decisions around hiring. So I think that's a great way to get a foot in the door and set yourself up well for the future. So thank you again for all of your questions that are coming in. Beth Hellner-Grunt, who is an expert on all things career, especially for recent and new college grads. That's what we're focusing on today. And we will be repurposing this show also for SiriusXM's Dr. Dawn on Careers on channel 132, which airs every Thursday at noon Eastern. So Christopher has a question. What, if any, specific advice would you both provide to non-traditional grads, such as boot camp grads? So by boot camp grads, I think we're gonna have to interpret that. What does that mean to you, Beth?
That to me, it means that you go to a coding boot camp. Is that's what I'm thinking about?
If that's not right, Christopher, let us know.
Yeah, please put in the comments. So the boot camp that I'm familiar with, a lot of clients of mine have gone to, is for coding, computer science boot camps, which are, I think, excellent. And by the way, I think this is a really good question and topic of, I think there's going to be more and more certifications that people are seeking. There's been some articles written recently, is that instead of students even getting more classwork in or more credits, they're going to look for more specialties. So maybe you want to become certified in a certain area as opposed to just getting the college credit. And I think boot camp is a really good way, or coding, or in any other kind of technical aspect. And I think there's tremendous opportunity. One of the things, and I was thinking about this earlier, is that I think this whole process is really going to turn the college degree into an upheaval, right? We're already seeing that with schools and whether people go back or not. And I think it's going to matter less and less about where you went to school and what your GPA is, and more about the skills that you've acquired, the experiences that you've had, and how you apply them, and how you can help a business because of the skills. And I think boot camp is a really good example of that. If you know how to code, you know how to build an app, you know how to do technical work, I mean, that's in very high demand by a lot of the tech sector right now. Tech sector is doing extremely well because we're using a lot of technology, and we need developments in new technology to help this new situation that we're living in.
And we've already seen it. We've already seen a lot of the top companies dropping degree requirements. And, you know, you used to see that on all of the jobs. And I think we're also seeing a lot of people going into the trades, which is another great option. Again, especially if you're thinking that the field you're looking to go into might have been sidestepped by the current situation, then, you know, maybe this is a great time to think about something that you've wanted to do that's completely different. I mean, this could be a great time for all career switchers to say, hey, I'm going to try something I've always wanted to do for a couple of years and see how it goes. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that we're going to see when we look back a year or two from now, Beth, is that a lot of the traditional paths that we've seen regarding college education or just education in general are going to be very different. And we're probably going to be seeing a lot of different programs popping up.
Yeah.
Well, just in terms of, you know, different types of ways to get educated.
Absolutely. It's already happened with SATs. They're being waived at almost every school for the fall. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's already happening, and it's only been, what, 2 months?
Yeah, it's happening quickly.
So question from Crystal, should students put a rescinded internship on their resume? That's an interesting one.
Yeah, this has been coming up a lot. I would say absolutely. If you earned getting hired and you went through the process, which is not easy always, to interview and be selected, I would absolutely put that on your resume. So it'll say the name and the company and say selected to be in this role and suspended or delayed due to COVID-19. And absolutely, because the fact that you earned it is still very impressive that you got the job in that area. So I would absolutely put that on your resume, and it's nothing to be embarrassed about. I think it shows that you took the initiative, that you got the internship, and that you're capable of getting another one, or capable of getting another job.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see that a lot right now. I mean, there's you know, a lot of people who've been laid off. There's going to be a little bit more forgiveness around that. People understand what's happening in the world right now, and that companies are furloughing or they're not hiring, and your internships are rescinding their offers and things of that nature. So I think it is going to be something that you definitely want to show. And then again, back to Beth, what you said before is, okay, now how are you going to use that time differently? How are you going to use it productively? Because that's going to be the next question, is what did you do during this time to grow your skills or apply what you've learned? So Brett has a question. How do you think the top fastest growing careers based on the Occupational Outlook Handbook of 2019 will change for this class of 2020 or those entering college in the fall?
So I'm not familiar with the handbook that you're referencing, but there was an article written, talked about the last recession, and that there was a trend that students tend to pick majors that they felt were more applicable to what they saw was happening during that time. So maybe we'll see a greater influx towards supply chain, which is a huge issue for us right now. Maybe we'll see a greater influx towards science or chemical engineering, because in terms of development of drugs or the process to get them to market. So you might see that. But as I tell young people, sometimes you don't know and you're not sure. And I would still say, follow the things that you think you're interested in. There will always be a market for certain things. It's just a matter of what you do with it and how you leverage it. So I don't want anyone to say, well, there's this perfect major or there's the perfect thing that you should study. If you don't like statistics, even though statistics might be helpful in measuring what's happening, then that's not a great choice. You got to pick things that speak to you, and then maybe if you're really more psychology focused or HR focused, and maybe you can bring it to those companies that are needing that type of help, and looking for those industries that hire. But I wouldn't make it an all or nothing decision about, I'm only going to study this because that's what's hiring right now. I mean, there's always a need. I think you got to follow what feels right for you.
And I think we're going to see some new majors or course of study coming out of this. I mean, right away, the Wharton School put together an online course around managing through epidemics, and got a lot of their top professors, and those professors took their specialties and applied it to the current situation. And this course was incredibly popular. And I think in situations like this, we often see new majors emerge or different specialties within majors that you may not have yet figured out. So I think, and I think the statistics are pretty strong. You probably know better than I do, Beth, about the link between what you major in and what you end up going into, because sometimes those could be very different and people often change their minds as well. So I think if you're deciding to go to school, it's not really important to know day one what you want to do and think that you're going to plan out the next 50 years of your career, because that's unlikely for many reasons. But if there's anything we're learning right now, it's because the market is shifting so quickly that even if you picked a major that is incredibly stable in year one, by year 4, that could look very different. Maybe it's still stable, but maybe the type of work looks very different. So I think we constantly need to be evolving and changing and growing and learning outside of ourselves, learning outside of our core, trying to do things that are different, trying to interact with people who are different, because these are sometimes where the best ideas come from, when you really go for an interdisciplinary approach. So let's see. Question from Douglas: with more interviews being held virtually, how can a recent grad get a feel for the corporate culture without seeing some of the visual cues they may see during a personal interview? Now, I love this question because that's, culture is so important. And I think it also kind of opens a door to another topic that I know you wanted to talk about today, which is virtual interviews, which are so prevalent nowadays because that's really the only way you can do it. But I love this question about culture. How do you get to know the culture when you only have a computer screen between you and the company?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Doug. First of all, I think it goes back to having those effective informational interviews, and you have to be, I'll call it a little bit of a detective on your own. So if you're in talks with a company and you're trying to get a sense, one of the things I also encourage candidates to ask for is, like, can I speak with someone who's doing the job right now? So it's not someone who's a hiring manager or is part of the decision-making process, just somebody who's doing what you would be doing. And I think sometimes people, when they know that, they'll give you a really candid view of what it's like. Now, maybe you don't see the physical, walls and what the building looks like, but I think to feel like, well, how do they manage? Are they micromanagers? Do they give you a lot of space? Is there a good teamwork? And I think sometimes about just asking good questions. I also would reach out to different people just in different roles on LinkedIn. That's why I love LinkedIn, just from a way of reaching out saying, hey, I'm considering a role at your firm. I'd love to understand your experience there. If you could share with me some feedback. So I think having those direct conversations as much as possible. There are reviews on certain websites online that will give you some feedback as well of what it's like to work there. But the more you can talk to people who are in jobs or in the environment or in the industry or role, the better it'll give you the feel for the culture about how they go about things. Are they supportive of work from home? Do they want you to be in the office? All of those aspects, I think the more you communicate, the better you'll get a sense for that.
Yeah, and I think there are also, in addition to that, questions you can ask around, who are the heroes in your company, or how do you celebrate success, or what types of internal reward programs do you have? I mean, there's so many of them, but I think certainly if you ask what's your culture like, you're going to probably get a company line and something that sounds great. But if you start to ask some of the questions where they have to give specific answers around, who are the heroes in the company, I think you can get a lot of insight into what's valued. I mean, things even around, is this position new? Did the person who left get promoted? I mean, questions around, is this a culture of promotion? Is this a culture of move people around within? So I think don't underestimate your part of the interview where you get to ask questions, because I think that a lot of people see that as a softball area, as maybe ask a couple of questions about what do you like working here. But I would encourage you to use that portion where you're offered to ask questions, and certainly you can ask questions throughout the whole interview, but to really ask some things that are insightful. One of the questions that I asked when I interviewed at Wharton to the person whose role I was replacing was, if you were my really good friend, what would you warn me about in this role?
That's a great question.
Yeah, and it's kind of difficult because people aren't prepared for that. It's kind of difficult to come up with something that isn't specific, but it's things like this that can really help you understand the role, and it's a two-way street. So in the way they're looking for a good fit, you need to be looking for a good fit as well. So that's a really great question. But Beth, I don't want to lose the virtual interview part of this, because I think that's so critical. And now that we're interviewing this way, I'm wondering if the bar is raised, because, when it was kind of a side thing, maybe you got away with a couple of things, but now that this is the way everybody's interviewing, I think we have to prepare a little bit more than maybe we used to.
Yeah, no question. And I think, as much as video is a part of, students and grads, MO of whether it's on FaceTime or Snapchat, but the video interview and how someone assesses you over video becomes a totally different level of being prepared. So whether making sure you have a clean background, even if the rest of everything is a mess on the other side that you can't see, having a clean background, dressing professionally, even if it's just from the waist up. And also I even do this. I look into the camera. If I watched you during this video, maybe it wouldn't look as good in terms of the eye contact. So sometimes it's actually just things that you're not used to, is looking at the camera versus at the screen, and practicing talking on video. People sometimes get cringeable and don't want to see themselves on video, or they're just staring at themselves. Is practicing answering questions, doing a practice video or recording yourself. Is your lighting good? I mean, if you have your back to a window, your face is going to be really dark. You're not going to see. So just all these logistics, even an external microphone, if someone can't hear you, if you don't have a great, internet connection, all of those things start to impact the quality of the interview and being prepared. So I think the more it's going to happen, I mean, this is how interviews are happening. There's another whole level of interviews that happen with no person on the other side, where you have to record yourself and through a scroll list of questions, which is very difficult because you have no verbal, no facial feedback at all.
Very
But
hard.
regardless, this mode of conversation and interviewing is not going away. It's going to be with us for quite some time, even once you get hired, of how you operate in the workplace. So I think the more that young people can get familiar with the technology and doing it in a way where they come across well, that they speak clearly and slowly and articulate using this medium, I think is going to be important.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things on the lighting that I haven't made a mistake on, it depends on what time of day. So maybe you practice in the evening and then your interviews in the morning and the lighting's completely different. So you really want to think about these things and how you come across. I think being prepared for technical glitches, which may happen, and not freaking out over that, but it certainly is a different way to interview. And I think maybe students who are graduating now, who are raised on technology, feel a little bit more comfortable in this area, but that can also go against you because maybe the expectation is a little higher for you, that this is something that you should be really comfortable with, and employers are. So, hey, we have just about 10 minutes left. So if you still have a question you'd like, you can definitely put that in the comments. We're talking all about class of 2020 and how you can be successful. So Beth, before we kick this off, you were talking about the most pressing problems that students may be facing right now. And I know we've talked about a lot of them, but are there any that haven't come up that you think is really important to make sure we cover?
Yeah, one of the problems right now, look, parents feel it, kids feel it, young adults, is this feeling of things don't look good. So I'm just going to bury my head and I'm not going to do anything. I'll just retract. Why bother calling anybody? Why bother reaching out to anyone? Because I won't get anybody. And I really want everyone to feel, if you can, look, everyone has different things going on personally, but don't do that. Try to do little goals, set small goals for yourself. I want you thinking of the long term and the long game, because this will not be forever. I don't know the time frame, but it will not be forever. And those who work on reaching out and gaining new skills and doing something now will be ahead when all of this, more extensive hiring opens. I mean, there's hiring now, but it's competitive. It's going to be even more competitive. And how you differentiate yourself is by putting yourself out there and actively working on it, as opposed to crossing your fingers and applying to jobs online and, just hope it comes together. Things have to be different. Things have to be done differently now. And the more you kind of lean into it and say, okay, today I'm going to send out 5 LinkedIn connection letters. I'm going to reach out to 3 people. I mean, small bites, just whatever you feel you can handle. You can do more, 10, 20, then great. But push yourself to do more than you normally would, because it's those who make the connections will be remembered. And trust me, as an employer, they don't want to post the job ad. They want to say, who do I know that I think would be great for this? That's such a hassle. Who wants to go through? Oh, I remember that candidate. He was really on the ball. I'm just going to call him. And you just bypass the entire interview application process.
It's so true. It's so true. And right now, if you think about how many more applications, job postings are getting than 3 months ago, you can see why an employer would much rather have a referral from somebody they know and trust, or another employee in the organization, than to have to go through and spend the time and energy going through all of those different applications that come in. So I wholeheartedly agree. And I think that one of the things you mentioned about being more competitive, I think that is not just the case now, but I think it's going to be the case going forward. And that's for a few reasons. One, companies know that they don't need people in the office anymore. So they don't have to just recruit locally. Now they can recruit from anywhere in the world. So that makes it more competitive. I think a lot of businesses are understanding too that they can run lean, and they're cutting back, and they're seeing that maybe they were spending money in places that, and those jobs aren't going to come back for a while because they need to save money. So there's going to be a number of reasons why this isn't short term. So if you're looking at it as you're saying, like, oh, I'll just wait a few months and see what happens, I don't think that the situation is going to be any less competitive as things go forward, especially for those opportunities that are most coveted. So we have a question from Steve. Most of my university students are obtaining LinkedIn certifications while in quarantine. What impact will certifications have on their opportunities going forward? And do employers even look for certifications? So I think Beth, you've covered this in a number of ways, and I think one of the things that you have said consistently through the last hour is do something. And I think a lot of us wait to say, well, what's the right thing? I got to figure it out. And we get stuck in this paralysis, and weeks have gone by, and so I think one of the things is do something. It doesn't have to be the right thing. Quite frankly, there may not be a right thing, but a LinkedIn certification is a great one. A lot of LinkedIn courses, I'm a LinkedIn learning instructor, and a lot of LinkedIn courses have been opened up and offered for free. If you don't have premium, if you have premium, they're free. But so now there's a lot of things that are not even just LinkedIn, but Coursera and a lot of these different platforms have these free or low-cost certifications that you can get. And if your option is to sit at home and wait for the job market to get better or go for a certification, I think that's an easy answer. What are your thoughts, Beth?
Yeah, I mean, I think any kind of certification, anything that adds to your skill set is valuable and it can't hurt. And even if it's something for fun, even it's like I'm reteaching yourself to play piano, or it doesn't all have to be job related, because it also could be things that stimulate you or a different thing that you've thought about. So it doesn't all have to perfectly fit into this thing. I think that there's a lot of this desire to, like, I have to be perfect and it has to be the right thing. And there's a lot of self-sabotage that goes on. I know, especially with young people will say, well, I'm not good enough, or I shouldn't do this. Just do it. Just try it. And move forward. And I think, the more you can enhance your skills, whether it's taking a class, there's actually, I think, over 400 classes from Ivy League schools that are being offered now for free, as well as certifications. Do it and see if you like it. Because by the way, when you also take it and you realize you don't like it, that's just as valuable to say, oh, I thought I was going to like this, but it's not for me. So that's good. That means you're not going to waste time applying to opportunities that needed that skill. You're going to maybe pivot in a different direction.
Yeah. So Steve, I think the resounding answer is yes. There's probably no one certification that's going to be a guaranteed hire, but I think everything you can learn, everything you can build, every way you can use this time productively is going to be helpful in the next steps. And who knows, taking a class, you may find something you love that you had no idea even existed, or you had no idea you had a passion for. So I'm a big fan of learning in any and all ways available. So I definitely would say yes. So, and we're going to go to our last question here from Suma. If you're a career switcher, what if you have the skill sets and have done the industry research and have a portfolio to demonstrate your skill sets, but there's a mental block to hire you from outside of the industry? How do you advise we proceed? So there's a mental block to hire you from outside the industry. So I'm going to assume that means, so I guess my question was, is it your mental block or is it the industry's mental block?
Right.
Right. I'm going to go with the industry's mental block. What do you think, Beth? Is that?
I'm going to go with, let's just say it's the industry. So let's just say she thinks she's doing all the right things and she's tried, and employers that she thinks she should have gotten an offer for say, you're not ready, you're not prepared. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I would do every time you have an interview with someone and says, thank you very much, but you're not a good fit, I always like to make sure you end interviews of like, do you think I'd be a good fit? And if not, can you please share with me why? Or I want to learn from this process. What else do you think I would need in terms of certification, knowledge, just being ready? You have to ask. She wrote, okay, industries, mental block. So the industries are kind of telling you don't have what it takes. I think you need to ask previous opportunities or people that you've interviewed with or people who are experts in the industry. Let me lay out for you my profile. What do you think I need to do differently? What I also find is an issue where you probably have the skill set is that people don't know how to articulate their skills and articulate their value. And here's a key thing. unless you are telling the employer how you can help them be more successful and help them improve a metric, either make money, save money, improve customer service, reduce risk, unless you put yourself in their shoes and show how you could help them be better because of you, it's going to be hard. The people who get the job are the ones who demonstrated that. And you may be the exact same on paper. You look identical, but verbally, when you verbalize and say, let me tell you, this is how I can add value because of my ability to do, I can analyze, I can solve problems, but I'm really focused on helping you get to this metric. And that's why you should hire me. So I'm guessing that maybe you need to just try to do a better job of understanding what you need, but also articulating your skills and your value a little bit better. And I think that's going to help you be more successful in landing those roles.
Yeah. And you said it earlier, Beth. First off, I love switchers, but your career story is so critical. And what I find a lot of people doing is introducing themselves in their kind of old way and then bringing in the skill sets that show what they're qualified for in the new way. And my position on this is you always have to match first, stand out second. So think about if somebody's in an industry, and there are several industries that are very biased. If you don't have that industry background, there's the sense that you haven't earned your dues, or you just couldn't possibly know how to function in this unless you start out at the very bottom. And so if it's an industry like that, I think there's a couple of things you can do. One, even in those industries, there's certainly firms or organizations that are more open to non-traditional candidates than other firms. And that's just the reality of it. So, if you're looking to go into private equity or something like that, there's definitely firms who are going to say, look, if you haven't done investment banking and kind of gone through the ranks, we're not going to look at you. But there's other firms that value the diversity of different backgrounds. So I think first and foremost, you have to really look at the organizations and their culture. And then secondly, I would say one of the ways right now the industry is looking at you as you're in the out group. And this is very psychology based. And this is where I think your mental block you're mentioning comes in is, you're in the in group or the out group, and humans are very much categorizing like this. One of the easiest ways to get in the in group is to get a referral from somebody in the in-group. Now, this can take time. This may not be somebody today. And I would say anything you can do through volunteering, maybe doing project work with them, maybe doing a temporary role, or perhaps you do have people in your network through a friend of a friend who you can build these relationships with. That's going to be really helpful as a switcher as well, to have somebody who's trusted insider say, hey, this person didn't go through the traditional path, but they definitely have the chops to come in and do this well. You should really speak with them. So I totally hear you, Suma. I know this is a problem in several industries, but I think match first, stand out second. Think about what they want to see. Try and get a referral and look for those companies within this industry that are more open and have hired from non-traditional backgrounds, because chances are there are some that do that. So Beth, I can't believe we've been speaking for an hour already.
I know, time flies. There's so much to cover, but this has been great.
Yeah, this has been really fantastic. I definitely want to, thank you. I want to thank our program director behind the scenes, Karina. Thank you so much for curating the questions for us. And of course, everybody who's listening and offering questions, thank you. Your questions have no doubt helped many, many others who are listening and have similar questions in this field. And this won't be the last conversation. We know that things continue to evolve as the pandemic kind of moves forward and things change. So we certainly want to be available to you to answer your questions. And Beth, where can people reach you if they'd like to learn more about Next Great Step and the services you offer?
Absolutely. So if you know a college student or grad who needs help on launching into their career, you can find us at nextgreatstep.com. And I would be happy to talk with you about how we could support you.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of you, Beth. You know your stuff, your research, and you help people get the job. So if you've not checked out Beth, definitely do that. And Hey, if you want more great tips and advice, I do a live show on SiriusXM 132 every Thursday at noon called Dr. Dawn on Careers. We are on a little bit of a hiatus right now. We're sheltering in place, but we hope to be back very soon. And in the meantime, you can definitely follow at Dr. Dawn Graham on Twitter as well. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Beth. And please stay out there, healthy, safe, and we'll all keep our fingers crossed that we move through this quickly.
Yeah.
Great to talk with you, Beth.
All right. Take care. Great talking to you.
Bye.